They kicked me out with a warm plate of mashed potatoes still steaming, said I was a liar, a thief. James Rowan, 52, former professor, and the only one holding Mira's last letter, written in her favorite vine-trimmed stationery. Ever been cut from your family photo while holding their heir? Tell me what you'd have done. The mashed potatoes were still warm, and that's how I knew they'd planned it. Everything else had cooled. Conversation, faces, even the air in the dining room, thick with whatever my mother had sprayed to make the place smell like cinnamon, and not tension. The gravy hadn't even formed a skin yet. I set the wine down on the sideboard, more out of habit than offering. "Sorry I'm late," I said. No one replied. My father didn't stand. My sister didn't look up. The only seat left at the table was the one across from Ellen, under the chandelier's weakest bulb. I slid into it, still wearing my coat. The chair where Mira used to sit was empty, untouched, like it had been assigned to absence itself. A few years back, my father told me, "Silence at a table isn't peace. It's verdict. I should have remembered that." That Thanksgiving, the silence had already decided. I looked at the spread. Stuffing, untouched. Green bean casserole, untouched. My mother's cranberry sauce, perfectly sculpted into the shape of the can. I was the only thing out of place, like the guest who hadn't gotten the memo about dress code. Or war. I started, gesturing to the wine. Ellen didn't even blink. Patricia, my mother, was staring at her folded hands like she was trying to remember where they'd been the last hour. Roger, my father, had that faraway look he gets when he's pretending to think, rather than admit he already knows. And then Ellen slid it forward. A sheet of paper. Printed. Highlighter. Circled headline, "Former Professor exploits dying heiress for inheritance." Underneath the photo, me holding the child. Mira's son. My son. I blinked. No one said a word, so I reached forward and picked it up. The words didn't sting. They couldn't. They were too far from truth, too bent to matter. But the photo, the framing, the timing, it was strategic. Familiar. Ellen's work, probably. "We didn't want to believe it," my mother said softly, still not looking at me. Ellen straightened her shoulders. Her voice was crisp, rehearsed. "We've decided. You're removed from the family trust. The board has already voted. We ask that you vacate the house by Sunday." I looked at my father. He nodded once, like he was authorizing a wire transfer. "You're not serious," I said. Ellen didn't respond. "They printed this without context. That's Mira's—" I stopped. Even now, I wasn't sure how much they wanted to hear, or if they ever really had. "She's not here to clarify, James," my mother said, "and we don't want this to escalate." I looked down at the mashed potatoes, steam still rising. Somehow they'd stayed warm through all of this. Everything else had gone cold. I opened my mouth. I could have asked them what they thought they were protecting. I could have reminded them that for 3 years after Mira passed, I'd driven 6 hours every other weekend just to make sure her endowment letters were hand-delivered. I could have told them I didn't need the house, or the trust, or their understanding. Just the truth. But I didn't. I didn't say anything. Ellen leaned in slightly, her voice dipping into something that sounded almost sympathetic. "We've already called a moving company. They'll be here at noon. It's best if you're not here when they arrive." I stared at her. She looked the same as always. Neat, decisive, like a court order in human form. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "This doesn't have to be permanent," she said, a sentence with no subject, no verb, just wishful thinking. I stood. My coat was still unbuttoned. The room felt both too bright and too dim, like someone had turned the contrast all the way down. I walked to the door. No one followed. The air outside bit at my face, Leaves swirled around the porch steps, and for a second, I thought about turning back, not to plead, but to say one last thing. Something poetic, maybe. Something that would make them remember the version of me before all this. But then Ellen's voice followed. Sharp, composed. Don't go online. Don't defend yourself. Let this fade with dignity. The door shut behind me. The porch light flickered once before turning off completely. There's a certain dampness that clings to old cardboard, like a memory you didn't invite back but came anyway, pulling up a chair and waiting for you to say something. The storage unit was colder than I expected, its overhead bulb buzzing in that way that made everything feel too quiet, even with the wind scraping the metal walls from outside. Unit 17. Third row, right by the chain-link fence that faced the empty lot. I'd avoided this place since Mira passed. Too tidy, too silent. But today, I unlocked it like someone turning a key they didn't remember keeping. The bin was exactly where I left it. Gray plastic, dusty, labeled in Mira's handwriting, Mira, private. The way she always wrote the word private felt less like a warning and more like a wink, like she knew I'd open it someday when I was ready or broken enough. I dragged it out slowly. My breath came out in small clouds, and the concrete floor creaked under my knees as I knelt beside it. The lid resisted at first, years of stillness, but then gave in with a low crack. And there it was. On top, a sealed envelope, yellowed slightly at the edges, if they ask written in block letters. Beneath it, a black USB drive wrapped in one of her silk hair ties. Old ultrasound photos tucked inside a journal I didn't know she kept. And notes, Mira's notes, pages in her tight cursive, full of line breaks and margin scribbles. James said he'd show up. He did too tired to explain inheritance law tonight. We'll try tomorrow. If this works, he won't need to argue. He'll just need to stand. I didn't take everything. Just the USB, the envelope, and one photo. The one where she's laughing, eyes half closed, hand resting lightly on the round of her stomach. Her other hand was holding mine. That night, back at the cabin, I waited until the fire settled into embers before plugging in the USB. The baby had fallen asleep early, his breathing soft through the monitor's blue glow. Snow tapped at the window, too tired to stick. The video loaded without fuss, just Mira sitting on our old porch swing. It must have been taken a few weeks before she went back into the hospital. Her voice was steady, eyes kind but alert. If you're watching this, she said, it means something got twisted. I'm sorry, love. I never wanted you to fight them. But if they come for him, protect the name, not mine. Yours. She smiled faintly. You're not obligated to justify your love to anyone. Not your silence, not your grief, not even your presence. Let them doubt, just stay the course. I watched it twice. The next morning, Erin called on Zoom. Her tone was clean and professional, like every word had been pressed and folded beforehand. James, she said, Ellen's filing for temporary guardianship. I've seen the draft. It's being framed as concern for the child's stability. I didn't flinch. Let her. I've already begun recording everything. Erin paused. You don't want to preemptively respond? No, I said. She wants a stage. I want a record. We ended the call. I sat in silence for a while, letting the weight of the snow press into the walls. Then I returned to Mira's envelope. I hadn't opened it yet. Something about it felt like a fuse. Instead, I picked up my phone. Notifications, always waiting. I usually didn't check them, but something nudged me to look. At the top of the trending page, number James Rowan. I tapped. Photos of me, blurry screenshots from years ago. One of Mira's memorial, a thread from a now verified account. This man is hiding behind a dead woman's will. Justice for the child. over 1,000 retweets. A friend from grad school had liked it. Another had commented, "If true, unforgivable." I closed the app, set the phone face down. The baby stirred. I stood, walked to his bassinet. He blinked up at me, not smiling, just watching. I picked him up gently, his warmth spreading across my chest like a silent rebuttal to everything outside these walls. We walked to the window. The snow had thickened, covering the porch steps in soft light. I pressed my lips to his forehead. He smelled like cotton and sleep and something purely innocent. "We won't run," I whispered. "Not this time." The first time I gave a public talk after Mira died, I trembled through every word. I clutched the lectern like it might slip away. This time, my voice didn't shake. I sat in the car outside the community center, one hand resting on the baby carrier beside me. The other clutched a half-folded printout of my notes, creased and smudged from being read too many times in too many parking lots. Nashville was grayer than usual, the drizzle soft but relentless, like even the weather wasn't sure how committed it was to showing up. Mira once told me, "If they never ask what really happened, speak anyway. The ones who need to hear it will." She said it over oatmeal, watching me try to fix a broken zipper on her coat. It had stuck then, like her words did now. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed with a certain enthusiasm that no one shared. Folding chairs in crooked rows, an urn of stale coffee perched beside a tray of wrapped cookies no one had touched. I adjusted the baby carrier against my chest. He was quiet, thank God. "James Rowan?" A woman approached. Melanie. Mid-30s, worn heels, sharp eyes, and the kind of smile that said she was holding 14 things together with a single piece of tape. "You're our third panelist. You'll go on second right after Aaron." I nodded. "Got it. Thanks." I took a seat in the back, blending in as best I could. A man on stage, Aaron, I assumed, was talking about the importance of planned guardianship in estate planning. His voice had the gentle authority of someone who'd been listened to for a living. Every now and then, he glanced at the audience, which included one woman near the back row who hadn't looked up once. Lorna, though I didn't know her name yet. When it was my turn, I walked to the front slowly, adjusting the mic stand with one hand while keeping the baby cradled close with the other. I didn't introduce myself beyond James. No titles, no explanations. "I used to think documentation was about paranoia," I began. "Now I know it's about protection. It's about making sure the people who can't speak for themselves still get heard. I didn't mention Mira. I didn't have to. I spoke about trust, what it means when someone gives you theirs. I talked about quiet promises, about being asked to stay when everything in you wants to run." I said, "She trusted me more than anyone else. That came with weight." And then I stopped. No need to wrap it in a bow. The applause was light but sincere. Afterward, as people milled about and chairs scraped against the linoleum, the woman from the back row approached. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if each step had to earn its right. "You said something up there," she said, voice low, "about trust not being loud. That sounded like my story." I met her eyes, soft, watery blue. "Did anyone let you tell yours?" She shook her head. "Not really. He passed last year. No one thought I should still be talking about it. But I wasn't talking to them." I nodded. Sometimes that's all people need, just someone who won't flinch when their grief shows up unannounced. Then came the reporter. Tan trench coat, tablet under one arm, the scent of ambition and aftershave trailing behind him. "Mr. Rowan, mind a question? Is this related to the Mira Ashmere Trust case?" I didn't hesitate. Not everything needs to be renamed to be true. He blinked, trying to decide if that was a quote or a brush off. I didn't clarify. He moved on. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. I strapped the baby into the back seat, wiped down the fogged windshield and climbed in. That's when I saw it. A scrap of paper, tucked neatly under the wiper blade. Handwritten. Stop pretending you're the good guy. This isn't your story to tell. No signature, no smudges. Just that. I didn't tear it up. I didn't photograph it. I folded it once, tucked it into the glove compartment, and drove. Not fast, not far, just forward. The first file I uploaded was named Proof 00. I didn't rename it. Some truths don't need dressing up. I just dragged it from my desktop and dropped it into the encrypted upload queue, watched the progress bar inch forward like a confession settling into place. It was early April, still cold enough that your breath lingered in the air like second thoughts. Portland didn't know whether it wanted to be spring or stubborn, so it chose both. My cabin had become less of a hideout and more of a workspace, an unintentional archive. Baby bottles beside legal pads, receipts stacked next to formula. A printer that ran almost non-stop for 2 weeks straight, humming like a quiet accomplice. Jazz played low from the speaker, something brushed and melancholy. I didn't listen to lyrics much anymore. I just needed a rhythm that wouldn't argue. Mira's voice echoed in my mind. Not from the videos, not even from the diary entries or voicemail backups. Just memory. They'll shout louder. You just need to write clearer. She had a way of saying things like she already knew the outcome and just needed me to catch up. That morning, I uploaded Mira's notarized statement. Then a PDF of the amended trust documents, scanned line by line, a Dropbox folder of time-stamped emails between her and her former board. Every file watermarked, metadata preserved. Not doctored, just clean. Truth in full resolution. Erin called on Signal around noon. Her face was lit only by her laptop screen, the background blurred like her schedule probably was. "You're not engaging, right?" she asked. "No," I said, sipping day-old coffee. "Just publishing." "Good. Let the echo chamber drown itself. If you speak too soon, they'll say you're playing defense." I nodded. "We're not playing anything." She tilted her head slightly. "I've worked with people in this position before, James. Most of them try to win. You're the only one just trying to last." That stuck with me long after the call ended. That evening, after the baby had fallen asleep in his crib, hand curled around a stuffed bear that looked twice its age, I found a file I hadn't opened yet. It was on the same USB from the storage unit, simply labeled aprilwindow.mp4. I hit play. Mira was seated by a window, sunlight flickering through wind chimes behind her. She held a stuffed fox in her lap, the one she kept on her writing desk for years. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands falling forward. "I hope," she said, voice steady, "that the people who loved me out loud are loving you in silence now." She smiled, just slightly. "You never needed the noise anyway. You just needed someone to keep you still." She looked down at the fox, then back up. "I don't know what they're going to say. I just know you'll survive it. That baby, he's already more protected than I ever was. You gave him that. Keep giving it." I closed the video and sat still for a while, hand resting on the back of the chair. The fire in the wood stove was dying down, shadows dancing on the walls. And then my phone lit up. Ellen's post had gone viral. She'd tagged Mira's old foundation in a thread, framed with careful outrage and selective memory, accusing me of monetizing grief, of weaponizing legacy for personal gain. 3 photos attached. Me at the memorial, me holding a check at an education panel, me walking away from the courthouse. No context, just implication. Comments poured in, hundreds, thousands. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank text document and started typing. For the record, I wrote. No names, no rebuttals, just a sequence of events, dates, screenshots, timelines, nothing dramatic, just facts in order, the way Mira would have organized a grant proposal. I ended it with my full name. No hashtags, no image, just my name, centered. I sat there, cursor blinking. And then, before I could hit post, a notification appeared. Private message. We see you. Let's talk, privately. Signed, Ashmere Board. No details. No smiley face, just 7 words and a signature. I didn't move. The baby stirred behind me, murmuring something soft, still caught between dream and hunger. I glanced back. He was still asleep, curled against his blanket like the world outside hadn't been trying to rip his name apart all day. I turned back to the screen. The file was still named Proof 00. That felt right. Unfinished, honest, quietly prepared. Forgiveness has many costumes. That morning, it wore cashmere, pearls, and perfectly practiced smiles. I heard the car before I saw it. Engine too quiet for its size, doors clicking shut like punctuation. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the mist on the fence line, and the lilacs were in full bloom, perfuming the air with a kind of defiance. I stepped onto the porch with a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, set it on the railing, and waited. 3 figures emerged from the gravel path like a curated memory. Ellen in a cream coat, Roger in a pressed shirt he probably hadn't worn since Mira's funeral, and my mother, Patricia, carrying something under her arm. I didn't need to guess what it was. I recognized the faded navy leather of the old family album. No one spoke first. When they reached the porch, Ellen gave a tight smile. "James, we want to reconcile, for his sake." I didn't answer. Behind me, the baby stirred lightly in the cabin, his soft coo picked up faintly by the monitor just inside the screen door. Roger cleared his throat. "This got out of hand. We misjudged the internet." Patricia didn't speak. She just held out the album like an offering. I took it slowly, my fingers brushing the cracked spine. I didn't open it. Ellen continued. "We're prepared to make things right. Reinstate your position in the trust. Issue a public statement. Retract anything that's unclear." Her tone was practiced, polished. She'd clearly rehearsed this pitch in the mirror, or to someone else who'd told her it sounded reasonable. I studied their faces. My mother's mouth was pursed, eyes darting from me to the door behind me. Roger looked down, shifting his weight like the gravel beneath him was made of something less steady. I stepped inside without a word. The air in the cabin was warm, humming with the white noise of the baby's sound machine. I picked up the envelope from the desk, the one with Mira's handwriting across the flap. A certified copy of the trust revision, signed, notarized, witnessed. I walked back out and handed it to Ellen. "This isn't about optics," I said. "It's about consequence." I set the album down on the porch bench without opening it. "He'll know who raised him. That's more than any nameplate ever did." No one spoke. The lilacs swayed gently in the breeze. I thought of Mira's laugh when she'd first planted them, joking that Portland needed more scent and less pretense. Patricia finally looked up. "James," she said, her voice trembling, "you were always different, harder to read, but we never wanted this." I nodded just once. And yet... Behind me, my phone buzzed. A message from Melanie. "Need confirmation on tomorrow's Zoom. Ashmere Board is moving fast." I let it sit. The 3 of them turned slowly. As they walked down the path, Ellen turned over her shoulder. "So you're never coming back?" I didn't pause. "I never left. You just stopped looking?" They said nothing more. The car doors shut. Tires crunched on gravel, then disappeared into quiet. I sat on the porch bench beside the album. I didn't open it. I already knew what was inside. Birthdays without my face, holidays where I'd been conveniently cropped, entire pages where my presence had been rewritten into silence. Across the lawn, the lilacs stood tall, blooming like truth in spring soil. Behind me, my son stirred again. Not in distress, just movement, a kind of life you can't fake. I reached for my coffee. Cold now, but honest. He still calls me Da, not Dad. I never corrected him. There's something dignified about distance, like he found a word for safety and kept it simple. The elevator hummed its way up 40 stories, smooth and slow, like it knew the weight of evenings like this. I adjusted his tiny vest as we rose, smoothing the lapels with my thumb. He blinked sleepily at the gold buttons, then curled against my shoulder with the kind of trust that can't be inherited, only earned. The rooftop gala was exactly what Mira would have rolled her eyes at. Velvet linens, champagne in tall flutes, a string quartet just barely audible over the hum of city horns below. But I think she would have smiled too. There was something subversive about turning spectacle into statement. Melanie met us at the top of the stairs, clipboard in hand, hair pulled back tighter than usual. She'd grown into the role since last spring, no longer just the organizer who passed out coffee at the non-profit panel. Now, she was Ashmere's board liaison. Still warm, still sharp. "They're ready when you are," she said, glancing down at the sleeping boy nestled against me. I nodded. "He won't mind. He likes the sound of my voice." When they called my name, it wasn't with fanfare, just a steady introduction. Steward of the Ashmere Continuity Grant. No last name. No titles. Just presence. I stepped up to the mic. City lights blinked through the glass ceiling above us like quiet witnesses. "This legacy," I said, "wasn't earned by bloodlines. It was entrusted by love." No one moved. "I don't accept honors," I continued. "I fulfill promises." Behind me, a screen flickered to life. Mira appeared, recorded months before she passed, her voice steady, her eyes soft. "If you're watching this," she said, "that means he stayed." She smiled faintly. "Thank you." Light applause followed, the polite kind, but I didn't need a standing ovation. I'd already heard what mattered. A reporter stepped forward, gray blazer, press badge angled toward the mic. "Mr. Rowan, any comment on whether the family will reclaim the estate?" Before I could respond, the board chair, a woman in her 60s with silver streaks in her hair and a glare that could flatten a courtroom, spoke up without hesitation. It was never theirs to reclaim. And that was that. Afterward, I sat near the edge of the rooftop, the baby asleep again in my lap, his small hand wrapped around one of my fingers. Melanie brought me a glass of water and a white envelope, one I'd asked her to hold on to until the speech was done. On the front, his name. Inside, a letter, written on Mira's old stationery, the kind with the faint vine border she used for everything from grocery lists to goodbye notes. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't explain. I just placed it gently in the inside pocket of his coat. "He'll open it," I said quietly, "when he chooses to remember, not when others tell him how." Melanie nodded, no questions asked. When the event ended, I carried him down the stairs, his breath soft against my chest. The city below washed in a fine curtain of rain. It wasn't the kind that drenched, just enough to make you feel like something had lifted. Outside, I waited under the awning for a car. My phone buzzed, message from Ellen. "Please call." I didn't open it, didn't archive it. I just deleted it, like erasing a voice you've already outgrown. The car pulled up. I buckled him in, his head resting to one side, cheeks flushed from warmth and dreaming. Then I looked at him. Really looked. He didn't know yet what legacy meant, but someday he'd know it wasn't a story told by volume. It was one written quietly and left waiting, like the letter under his jacket. I slid into the driver's seat, checked the mirror one last time and whispered, "We're going home." He still slept soundly in the back seat that night, and I remember thinking, legacy isn't something you announce. It's something you quietly protect. In this life, we won't always be believed at first. But if we live with quiet clarity and honor the love entrusted to us, the truth finds its way. Maybe not through applause, but through the small hands we hold and the names we preserve. If this story reminded you of someone you stood by when no one else would, I hope you'll share what it meant. Sometimes, the quietest stories carry the strongest echoes.